table of contents, and that's the last sort of required project that everybody in the class is going to work on. But there are opportunities to boost up your grade with some alternative or some extra projects, and those are what I want to start talking about this week. And the first two of these are different sorts of feature stories, and one of them is what I call in this class a visual feature, and the other is a hybrid feature. And I'm going to be looking at a few examples, or at least a couple examples of both of those. Now, a visual feature is not just a feature story that happens to have a lot of photos. What distinguishes a visual feature is that the photos really are the story, the photos are the narrative driver, and the text, if it exists, and it usually exists a little bit, is just there as a support or an explanation of that story. The text never or nearly never goes from page to page. It is with always with the picture that it belongs with. I mean, that's not a hard rule, but that's generally true. So here is the classic type of visual feature is the fashion feature. And I've got a few of these. This one happens to be from New York Magazine a couple of years ago. And most visual features have a theme. It's not just here's a dress, here's a necklace, here's a hat, but something ties it together conceptually. So in this case, it is a particular type of dress called a shirt dress, and you can see it buttons all the way down, and it has a shirt-like collar. And it looks at a few examples of these. So here's the opener, that happens to be vertical. And here's the subsequent spread of a couple other examples of this style of dress. And there's no rule that a visual feature has to have a sidebar, but it could. And so this one happens to have a fun little sidebar. They just put a photographer out on the streets of New York and found women wearing this style of clothing and asked them where they bought it, how much it costs. Now, when I say the text is just there to support the uh, picture, what I mean is if you show someone a dress or a necklace or whatever it is you're talking about, they're going to want to know how much it costs, how do they buy it, how do they make that dress theirs if they like it. And so that's the text is essentially irrelevant until the picture has done its job. The text is if you're not interested in the dress, you don't care how much it costs, or maybe you do, maybe just to be appalled. You say, "Oh God, that's hideous! Who would pay $600 for that?" Unbelievable. So maybe that becomes part of the entertainment, even if you're not interested. But by and large, the text is sort of meaningless without the picture, and the picture just needs a little bit of text that says it, that explains it. And really, for a visual feature, for a fashion feature, this is all you need. This is a nice little sidebar, but this that tells us where to get that dress is all we need. Another example of a fashion feature on the road. And this has a theme of, I would say, visually that all the pictures are taken outdoors, and all of them are sort of centered around this imaginary road trip. So sometimes you'll see the big fashion magazines will do cities, or we'll do all the pictures are taken outside, or all the pictures are taken in beautiful rooms. And of course, it doesn't have to be clothing, it could be accessories, it could be furnishings. If it was a shelter magazine, it could be a bunch of anything, it could be almost anything. So here's another spread. It's in some cases, this would be, the caption format. In some cases, it would be more of a design format. In this case, these come with a little bit of a headline, and that is this particular one went on for pages and pages. I'm only showing you three of them, but the theme is these are taken outside. They're unified by one person probably doing hair and makeup, and what also unifies it is the clothing is all very patterned. And if you, whoop, we went too far. I meant to go back. So all of this is sort of pattern or printed clothing is also what ties it together. Now, food can also be a visual feature. So this is a feature called Easter Indulgences, and it has an introductory page that shows one of the food items. And here are photographs and recipes. And the recipe is only important if the photo catches your attention. If you look at this and you say, oh, that looks good, I would like to make that, the recipe becomes relevant to you. But until you decide to commit to making it, the text is not relevant. It is the picture that is driving the story. Oh, and there's the last spread from that I'm showing. But a visual feature can be about anything else. In the 90s, Wired magazine was doing some very creative, I thought, visual features, and this is one of them. Another one was about life underground and various industrial uses for underground and cavernous spaces, but this one's called Original Models, and you see it opens like a feature, and you'll note that it has the year that this came out. This is the first Super Soaker from the text, put together with a soda bottle and PVC pipe, and it just talks a little bit about how this came into being. You see the picture and you can learn a little bit about it as you want. And the other thing you'll notice about these, and this has been true of others of them, is they can pace the pictures, they can change the pacing. So here we go from a full spread to a 2 pictures on a spread, and so we have the first push button phone and the first Atari video game, and then it opens up to a full spread again. So you can divide your page as you wish when you're making a visual feature. Now the other kind of feature is what we call in this class a hybrid feature. And a hybrid feature is sort of between a feature story and a brief section. In that it is not one continuous text that runs throughout a course of pages, but a bunch of related texts. So why isn't it, what makes it different than a brief section? Well, first, it opens up with a feature opener. So we have this nice big piece of art and the big headline, which you probably wouldn't have in your typical brief section. And 2, it's built around a topic that you could not support month after month. So, for example, the brief sections, and this is something I emphasized quite a bit when we were working on briefs, was that it should be a varied experience. It should have a lot of variety. It should have a bunch of different things. The hybrid feature can be about a topic that magazine would never do again. So in this case, we have the wisdom of animals, and we have all these little stories. This looks like an introduction, and usually these are all self-contained. They don't go page to page either, although sometimes things can. Here's sort of a little, it's arranged like a timeline. I don't think it really is. It's just like teeny tiny stories about animal skill sets. And that one continues, but really it doesn't, because these are all self-contained little stories. And there's another spread from that one. And here's another good example of one that you could not do every month. This is a food lover's guide to the Super Bowl, and so it's basically party suggestions for having a successful Super Bowl event. And you'll note that this starts with what we've called in the past a 50-50 spread, and you'll note these little cartoon characters, which in this case become a unifying element throughout this. So here's the first spread from this. A little story called What You're Cooking, a couple recipes and suggestions for making things, and then it continues with beer suggestions, and it even forays into a little story about the remote. So this is sort of briefish, but it's lively, a bunch of related topics orbiting around a subject that is really too small to sustain on a monthly basis, but might make a really interesting story once in a magazine. And so those are the 2 types of features that you might choose to take on, the visual and the hybrid, and I'll be talking about other things for additional credit in a next video.